All right, so we're ready for another deep dive. This one hits close to home.
Yeah.
You know, John, our Brazilian teenager with the Ferrari dreams.
Ah, yes, John's quest for English mastery. It's a journey many can relate to, I imagine.
Yeah, well, mechanical engineering A&D working for Ferrari, it's a tall order,
Yeah.
especially when you're starting in Portuguese, right? So we've got a bunch of stuff to go through today to really see where he's at.
Let's see, you've got notes from his English school, Academia BSB, plus observations from that family trip to Japan. Sounds like the perfect blend of classroom and real-world application.
Japan was amazing,
Yeah.
honestly. But yeah, seeing John use his English out in the wild gave us a whole new perspective on his progress. Like, can he actually order sushi without resorting to charades? Spoiler alert, he did great.
That's fantastic to hear. Real-world experience is invaluable. It's one thing to learn vocabulary and grammar rules in a classroom, but quite another to apply them spontaneously in a foreign country. So based on his notes, it seems John's currently at a CEFR B1 level.
B1, okay? But for those of us who don't speak acronym, what does it actually mean in terms of, like, real-life English skills?
B1 signifies an intermediate level. He can understand and use familiar everyday expressions, handle simple interactions, describe experiences. He's got the basics down, enough to navigate everyday situations.
So ordering food, asking for directions, that kind of thing. Because he aced those in Japan, even navigated that crazy Tokyo train system. All in English, I was impressed.
That's excellent news. Those are all essential skills for traveling and interacting in an English-speaking environment. It shows that his classroom learning is translating into practical ability.
Speaking of practical ability, let's talk about pronunciation.
Right.
Someone put this delicately. His TH sound still needs some work.
Ah, the infamous TH, a notorious challenge for non-native speakers. But don't worry, it's a common issue and can be improved with targeted practice. It looks like Academia BSB provides pronunciation guidance as part of their curriculum.
Yeah, they've got a pretty impressive program. They use all this cool tech stuff. Digital exercises, downloadable materials, even a gamified system with points and leaderboards. I kind of wish they had that back when I was learning.
Gamification can be incredibly effective, especially for younger learners. It taps into their competitive spirit and makes learning more fun and engaging. And speaking of engaging, I see they also offer weekly podcasts.
Oh, yeah, those podcasts are great. They cover all sorts of interesting topics. Climate change, travel tips, even pop culture. I keep telling John he should listen to them, to boost his vocabulary and listening skills. But you know how teenagers are.
It might take some encouragement. Perhaps you could find a podcast that aligns with his interests, like maybe something about cars or engineering, or you could even listen to one together as a family and then discuss it afterwards.
That's not a bad idea. Maybe we could even sneak in some English practice during those discussions. Turn it into a family learning experience. Huh. Okay, so we've covered the basics. John's B1 level, his real-world adventures in Japan, and the cool stuff Academia BSB offers. Now I think it's time to get into the nitty-gritty. I brought along John's essay about the Japan trip, and let's just say it's a bit of a roller coaster.
Writing is often the most challenging aspect of language learning. It requires a deep understanding of grammar, vocabulary, and sentence structure. So let's dive in and see what we can learn from John's writing.
Okay, get ready for this. Here's how it starts. In my trip, I go into Japan, got to know the culture for the Japan. Honestly, sometimes it feels like we're back to square one.
No, let's not be too critical. Remember, he's still learning. And it's important to focus on the progress he's made. He's using new vocabulary related to travel and culture, and that's a great sign.
I guess so. But what about his grammar? His verb tenses are all over the place. He keeps using the present continuous when it should be the simple past. It's driving me crazy.
It's a common mistake for English learners, especially those whose native language has a different way of expressing time. But the good news is that his teacher has provided helpful corrections and suggestions for improvement. It seems like Academia BSB is very focused on personalized feedback, which is essential for effective learning.
Well, at least someone's paying attention. But seriously, I do appreciate the teacher's feedback. It's just, sometimes I feel like we're hitting our heads against a wall.
Learning a language is a process, not a destination. There will be moments of frustration and moments of triumph. The key is to stay patient and supportive and to encourage John to keep practicing.
Easier said than done, especially when you hear him butchering the TH sound for the 100th time. I swear I've demonstrated it 1,000 times, but it just doesn't seem to stick.
I understand your frustration, but think about it this way. Even though he struggles with certain sounds, he's still out there using his English, navigating real-world situations, and that's something to be proud of.
True, true. He did manage to order us some delicious ramen, even if it came out sounding more like layman small victories, right?
Exactly. Every step forward, no matter how small, is a step in the right direction. Now, let's take a closer look at some specific examples from John's essay. I'm curious to see what kind of vocabulary and grammar structures he's using.
All right, let's see. Here's a sentence. The best part for the travel is the koyasan. We going to the guy. He repeated the same phrase twice. And what's with the koyasan? It sounds like something in a Star Wars.
It seems like he might have been struggling to find the right words or structure to express his thought. And Koyasan likely refers to Mount Koya, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's a common mistake to add the before proper nouns. But remember, these are all learning opportunities.
Opportunities for me to pull my hair out, you mean?
Yeah.
But okay, fine. Let's dissect this sentence. What would be a better way to phrase it?
His teacher suggested, the best part of my trip, however, was visiting Mount Koya, Koyasan, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Much clearer and more grammatically accurate, right?
Okay, I'll admit that's a significant improvement. Maybe there's hope for him yet. But what about those idioms? You know, those expressions that make English sound like a foreign language, even to native speakers. Did he encounter any of those in his studies?
It seems he did. He learned a new one, off the beaten path.
Off the beaten path. What does that even mean? Sounds like something you'd say to a lost hiker.
It means a place that's not well known or frequently visited, kind of like a hidden gem.
Well, we did visit some pretty remote temples in Japan, so I guess it fits. Maybe I should start using that idiom myself. Sounds kind of sophisticated.
See, you're learning too.
Don't get too excited. I still can't get over his pronunciation. It's like he's speaking with a mouthful of marshmallows.
We've established that pronunciation is an ongoing challenge. But remember, AcademiaBSB offers specific resources and training for that. Perhaps he can focus on those areas in his next term.
Yeah, maybe a pronunciation boot camp is in order. But honestly, even if he nails the sounds, he's still got to be willing to open his mouth and, actually speak. That's the real hurdle.
I agree. Confidence is key. And it looks like AcademiaBSB addresses that too. They offer speaking training, specifically designed to get students comfortable expressing themselves in English.
Speaking training, huh? So like public speaking classes. Because that sounds like John's worst nightmare.
Not quite. It's more about building fluency and confidence in everyday conversations. They have small group classes where students can interact with each other, practice their speaking skills, and get feedback from a teacher.
Small group classes. I can already picture John trying to blend into the furniture, hoping the teacher doesn't call on him.
Well, that's why they also offer one-on-one tutoring for those who prefer a more personalized approach. A dedicated tutor can work with John at his own pace, focusing on his specific needs and challenges.
A tutor, huh? Maybe we should look into that. Although knowing John, he'd probably try to steer the conversation toward car engines and Formula One racing.
It's all about finding the right balance, encouraging his interests while also keeping him focused on his English goals. But let's not forget about those weekly podcasts. They're a fantastic resource for passive learning.
True. But how do we get him to actually listen to them? He'd rather watch paint dry than sit through a podcast.
Maybe you could make it a family activity. Pick a podcast that everyone might find interesting, listen to it together, and then discuss it afterwards.
A family podcast night. I'm not sure that's going to fly. It'll be me struggling to understand the accents, John glued to his phone, and his father snoring in the background.
You never know until you try. It could be a fun and educational experience, and it might even spark some interesting conversations. But speaking of conversations, let's circle back to John's essay. We were analyzing his sentence structure.
Oh yeah, that sentence. It was like a train wreck of grammar. He used the same phrase twice, and his word order was all over the place.
Remember, writing is a complex skill. It takes time and practice to master, and it's clear that John is still developing his understanding of English grammar. But with the guidance of his teacher and continued effort, he'll make progress.
I hope you're right. But honestly, sometimes I feel like I'm speaking a foreign language myself when it comes to all this grammar stuff. Present perfect continuous. What in the world is that?
We all have our areas of expertise. Don't be too hard on yourself. The important thing is that you're supporting John's learning journey and that you're willing to learn alongside him.
Okay, I'll try to be more patient.
Yeah.
But speaking of patience, let's talk about those vocabulary exercises. Did John manage to expand his lexicon beyond car, engine, and Ferrari?
It seems he did. He correctly identified terms related to climate change, like emissions, habitat, and endangered species. Perhaps he'll even be able to explain the greenhouse effect in English someday.
Huh. I doubt that'll come up in his job interviews at Ferrari. But hey, at least he's learning something. So we've covered pronunciation, speaking training, vocabulary. What else does Academia BSB have up their sleeve?
Well, they also emphasize real-world application, which is crucial for language learning. They offer conversation clubs, field trips, and even cultural events to help students immerse themselves in the English language and culture.
Field trips. Now that sounds interesting. Maybe they'll take him to a car museum or something. That might actually get him excited about speaking English.
It's definitely worth exploring. And, you can always supplement his formal learning with some fun activities at home, watch movies in English, play word games, even just chat with him in English about his day.
Yeah, but getting him to talk about anything other than cars or video games is like pulling teeth.
Be patient. It takes time and effort to build fluency. But with consistent practice and encouragement, he'll get there. And who knows, maybe one day he'll be giving presentations to the Ferrari executives, all in perfect English.
Now that's a dream worth working towards. But for now, let's focus on getting him to order a pizza without resorting to hand gestures.
Baby steps. Remember, every little bit of progress counts. And as long as John is motivated and engaged, he'll continue to learn and grow.
Okay, I'm feeling a bit more optimistic now, but I still think we need to address that TH sound. Maybe we can hire a speech therapist who specializes in Italian accents.
Oh, that's a thought. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. We've got a lot of great resources from Academia BSB to explore. And remember, the most important thing is to support John's learning journey and celebrate his successes, no matter how small.
All right, so we've talked about pronunciation, speaking practice, even those cool conversation clubs. But let's be real for a second. How do we actually get John to use this stuff? I mean, he's a teenager. They're practically allergic to effort, right?
It's all about motivation and finding the right approach. Academia BSB seems to understand this. They have a really well-rounded program with a good mix of structured learning and fun activities.
Okay, but how does that translate into, actual fluency? Can they really get him speaking confidently in a matter of weeks?
Fluency is a journey, not a destination. It takes time and consistent effort. But the key is to create a positive and supportive learning environment. And that's what Academia BSB seems to excel at.
All right, so let's say John is motivated. He's doing his exercises, listening to the podcasts, but he still sounds like he's gargling with gravel when he speaks. What then?
Pronunciation is a common challenge, but it can be overcome with practice. And Academia BSB offers specific resources for this. They have those interactive exercises we mentioned, plus audio recording so he can listen and repeat, train his ear and his mouth to work together.
Okay, but what about the mental block? That fear of sounding silly or making mistakes. How do we get him over that hump?
That's where the speaking training comes in. Those small group classes can be really helpful. He can practice with other learners at his level, make mistakes without feeling embarrassed, build confidence gradually.
I don't know. John's not exactly a social butterfly. He'd probably rather face a charging bull than speak English in front of a group.
Well, in that case, there's always one-on-one tutoring. A dedicated tutor can provide personalized attention, help him overcome his anxieties, work at his own pace.
A tutor? Huh. I'm not sure if our budget can handle that. Plus, knowing John, he'd probably try to convince the tutor to talk about cars instead of English.
It's an investment worth considering. A good tutor can make a world of difference. And remember, communication skills are essential for success in any field, especially engineering.
True.
Yeah.
But I still think there's no substitute for real-world practice.
Yeah.
Actually using the language in authentic situations.
Absolutely. And that's where those conversation clubs and field trips come in. They provide opportunities for students to apply what they've learned, interact with native speakers, gain confidence in their abilities.
Okay, but how do we know if it's actually working? I mean, is there some kind of, fluency test we can give him?
There are standardized tests, of course, but the best measure of progress is his ability to communicate effectively. Can he understand and be understood? Can he express himself clearly and confidently?
That's a good point.
Oh.
So basically, we just got to trust the process. Keep encouraging him, provide him with the right resources, and hope for the best.
Exactly. Learning a language is a marathon, not a sprint. There will be ups and downs, moments of frustration, and moments of triumph. The key is to stay patient, supportive, and celebrate every milestone along the way.
Well said. So for all the parents out there listening, remember, you're not alone in this. We're all in this together.
That's right. And for all the Johns out there, keep practicing, keep pushing yourselves. The rewards are well worth the effort.
And who knows, maybe one day, John will be giving a presentation to the Ferrari board, all in flawless English.
Now that's a dream worth striving for. That's all the time we have for today's deep dive. We hope you found it insightful, informative, and maybe even a little bit entertaining.
Until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep those dreams alive.